Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be found acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. This reading from the Gospel according to St. Mark reveals that two of Jesus' disciples, James and John, who were brothers, were jockeying for high places, high positions. They came to Jesus requesting that they sit one on his right and the other on his left in his glory or in his kingdom. This move on the part of the brothers didn't sit well with the other 10 disciples. We are told that when they heard it, they were displeased with James and John. They were indignant. In fact, some translations say they were angry with those brothers. Always the teacher, Jesus used this opportunity to teach his disciples a lesson. He taught them about greatness. Jesus taught them that those who want to be great must be prepared to minister to others. Those who want to be first must be involved in serving others. And drawing from his own experience, his own life, Jesus says those words that are our text for this evening. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. Not to be served, but to serve. It is obvious from these words that Jesus saw his role as serving others, that his life consisted of service to other people. When we examine the Gospels, we see how much of his life was spent serving or ministering to others. He ministered to the sick. He helped many who were diseased. He even gave his disciples a lesson in service when on one occasion he washed their feet, a role that was reserved for servants. He was focused on serving others and not being served by them. It wasn't about what other people could do for him, but what he could do for others. And that should always be our position. Not what others can do for you, but what you can do for others. The kind of service that Jesus is speaking about in tonight's text, and what he offered is always focused on others. It is not self-centered. It is not selfish. It does not ask, what is in this for me? Or how can I benefit? Rather, it is, what do others need? And how can my actions benefit them? And to give his life. Here is something that shows the depth of Jesus' commitment to others. He was fully dedicated to serving others and did so with every ounce of his being. Complete, total, no reservations. He surrendered all. He gave his life. And before we think that that was easy, we should think again about what Jesus says in the text. He speaks about drinking of a cup. That is the cup of suffering, which he drank to the bitter dregs. He speaks about a baptism by which he would be baptized. That was the baptism of his death. The story is told of a chaplain who was ministering to a soldier in hospital and said, "You have lost an arm in the great cause." To which the soldier replied, "I didn't lose it, I gave it." Speaking of a soldier, during the Memorial Day observance, we heard the phrase repeated quite often, "making the ultimate sacrifice," referring to those who died in the wars, whose memory we honor on that day. They gave their lives in the cause of freedom, and by so doing, they exemplified what true service means. We should always be grateful to and honor them. As May 30th, which is tomorrow, is being observed by Christians as Ascension Day, which in Christian liturgy marks the end of Jesus' physical presence and ministry on earth and his return to the Father. So tomorrow is a special Christian festival, Ascension Day. We remember tonight and give thanks for Jesus, who gave his life. He made the ultimate sacrifice so that we and others might have life. And Jesus says, "The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." A ransom, you know, is defined as a sum of money or other payment demanded or paid for the release of a prisoner. That is how the word ransom is defined. And the use of this word by Jesus in our text helps us understand that by giving his life, Jesus saves. Jesus sets the prisoner free. Jesus brings freedom and liberty to those who trust in him. On the 3rd of February, 1943, a troop ship named the Dorchester was carrying more than 900 soldiers and military personnel across the North Atlantic. A German U-boat spotted the convoy and fired 3 torpedoes at the ship. Only one struck the target, but the blast below the waterline fatally damaged the ship. In the cold darkness, the crew was ordered to abandon ship. There were not enough lifeboats for all the men, nor were there enough life jackets. 4 chaplains aboard the ship that night helped comfort those who were injured in the explosion and those who feared the coming of death. When the ship was ready to sink, the chaplains took off their life jackets and handed them to 4 young soldiers who had none. They gave up their safety. They risked their own lives in order to save others. And according to the story, the heroic gesture inspired a nation, and Congress voted a special posthumous medal in their honor. My dear friends gathered here this evening, and those who will view this service online, let the words and example of Jesus inspire us to serve. And as St. Ignatius prayed, dearest Lord, teach me to be generous. Teach me to serve you as you deserve, to give and not to count the cost, to fight and not to heed the wounds, to toil and not to seek for rest, to labor and not to ask for reward, save that of knowing I am doing your will. Amen.